I've lived with chronic pain since I was 11 years old. My family calls it milking attention. The morning of my grandfather's estate announcement, I opened my nightstand drawer for my medication, the only thing that lets me walk without collapsing, and found it empty. Every single pill gone. My hands shook as I texted my sister Madison. Her reply came instantly. "You probably lost them. You're always so dramatic about everything." But I didn't lose them. Someone took them. And as I stood in that hospital conference room 12 hours later, spine-screaming legs trembling, sweat dripping down my neck, I watched my mother's face drain white when the doctor pressed play on a video I didn't know existed. She screamed, "Turn it off!" Madison fainted before the screen went dark, and my grandfather from his wheelchair whispered 4 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. It's been 25 years. 25 years of what I was about to find out. Have you ever discovered that the people who should have protected you were the ones destroying you all along? My name is Erin Wolf. I'm 36 years old, an interior designer with my own small but successful business, and I've lived with chronic sciatica since I was 11. My family thinks I'm exaggerating. They've thought that for 25 years. Growing up as the older sister should have meant something. Instead, I learned early that in the Wolf family there was Madison, and then there was me. Madison was the golden child, beautiful, charming, effortlessly the center of every room. I was the quiet one, the sick one, the daughter who somehow never quite measured up. When I graduated top of my design program, my parents mentioned it once and changed the subject to Madison's new boyfriend. When I landed my first major client, my mother asked if I was sure I could handle the stress with my condition. Every achievement I fought for was minimized. Every struggle I endured was mocked as attention-seeking. After a while, I stopped sharing anything at all. But my grandfather Harold was different. He was the only person in my family who ever looked at me like I mattered. Every Sunday he used to call just to ask how I was really doing, not the polite version, but the truth. He remembered my medication schedule better than I did. He asked about my work and actually listened to my answers. When I was at my lowest, his voice on the phone was sometimes the only thing that got me through the week. Then 2 years ago, everything changed. Grandpa was diagnosed with heart failure, and Madison immediately volunteered to become his primary caregiver. At first, I thought it was genuine. Maybe my sister had finally grown up. Maybe she wanted to give back to the man who had loved us both. But slowly, I started noticing things. My calls to Grandpa went unanswered more often than not. When I visited, Madison was always there, hovering, steering every conversation. Grandpa would look at me sometimes with this desperate expression, like he was trying to tell me something but couldn't find the words. Before he could speak, Madison would interrupt. "Grandpa's tired, Erin. You should probably go." I wanted to believe I was imagining it, but something felt deeply wrong and I couldn't prove it. Then came the week that changed everything. My mother called me out of nowhere, which should have been my first warning sign. She never calls unless she wants something. "How's your medication?" she asked, her voice oddly careful. "Do you have enough?" I couldn't remember the last time she'd asked about my health without an undertone of judgment. Later that same day, she suggested I skip the upcoming estate planning meeting. "You know how your condition acts up," she said. "Maybe it's better if you just rest." That night, I came home to find my bedroom window slightly open. I always lock it. Always. And lingering in the air was a perfume I recognized instantly, not Madison's usual scent, but my mother's. My chest tightened. Why would my mother have been in my apartment? The next morning, I received a call from Grandpa's lawyer, the first direct contact I'd had that wasn't filtered through Madison in months. His voice was serious. "Your grandfather insists you attend the estate announcement," he said. "He has something important to tell you, something he says he should have told you 25 years ago." I asked what he meant, but the lawyer only repeated, "He insists. Please be there." 25 years. The number echoed in my head. I was 11 years old 25 years ago. The year my back problems started. The year everything in my family shifted in ways I never understood. That evening, I went to my nightstand drawer for my pain medication, the prescription that keeps me functional, that lets me walk and work and live a normal life. I opened the drawer and found it completely empty. Every single pill was gone. My hands trembled as I stared at the empty space, the open window, my mother's perfume. And now this. Someone had been in my home. Someone had taken the only thing standing between me and collapse. But who? And why now, right before the most important family meeting of my life, I spent that entire night tearing my apartment apart, searching every drawer, every cabinet, every corner where I might have somehow misplaced an entire bottle of prescription painkillers. I knew I hadn't. I knew exactly where I kept them, the same place I'd kept them for years. But when you've been told your whole life that you're dramatic, that you exaggerate, that your pain isn't as bad as you claim, a small part of you starts to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe I did forget. Maybe I am losing my mind. That's what gaslighting does to you. It makes you doubt the things you know to be true. By morning, the pain in my lower back had spread down both legs. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. I texted my family, keeping it simple. Someone took my medication. Did anyone come by my apartment yesterday? Madison responded within minutes. Pills don't just walk away, Erin. You probably forgot where you put them. This is exactly what I mean about you always making everything into a crisis. My mother's response came seconds later, almost too fast, as if she'd been waiting. Why would anyone take your pills? You must have misplaced them. You know how scattered you get when you're stressed. I stared at my phone, reading both messages over and over. Madison attacked. Mother deflected. Two different approaches, but somehow perfectly coordinated. Were they working together? The thought made my stomach turn. Around noon, Madison showed up at my door, carrying a fruit basket wrapped in cellophane with a bright yellow bow. She was smiling for the benefit of my neighbor across the hall who happened to be checking her mail. Just wanted to see how my big sister is doing, Madison announced loudly, her voice dripping with performed sweetness. Once inside, the mask dropped. She set the basket on my counter and looked around my apartment with barely concealed contempt. You look terrible, she said. Maybe you should skip tomorrow. Grandpa would understand. I watched her carefully, noting how her eyes kept darting to my bedroom door. The lawyer called me, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the pain radiating through my body. He said Grandpa wants to tell me something from 25 years ago. The change in Madison was instant and shocking. Her face didn't show the greed I expected, the calculating look of someone worried about inheritance. Instead, I saw raw terror, pure visceral fear that drained the color from her cheeks. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Whatever he tells you, don't believe it, she whispered urgently. He's old Aaron. His memory is failing. He confuses things, makes up stories. You can't trust anything he says. I pulled my arm away. Why are you so scared of what an old man with a failing memory might say? Madison's jaw tightened. She didn't answer. She just grabbed her purse and left, slamming the door behind her. In that moment, I understood something important. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about the estate. Madison was terrified of something specific, something that happened 25 years ago. And whatever it was, she would do anything to keep it buried. The pain drove me to my doctor that afternoon. I could barely walk into his office. Dr. Patterson had been treating my sciatica for 8 years, and he knew my prescription history better than anyone. When I explained that my medication had vanished, his expression shifted from concern to suspicion. Controlled substances don't just disappear, he said slowly. Have you considered that someone might have taken them deliberately? He asked if I had any security cameras in my apartment. The question hit me like a slap. I did have cameras. I'd installed them 2 years ago after someone tried to break into my building. Basic wireless cameras, one in my living room and one pointed at my bedroom door. I'd almost forgotten they existed. I'd been so consumed by pain and confusion that I hadn't thought to check them. Dr. Patterson leaned forward in his chair. There's something else you should know. Someone called my office last week claiming to be you. They asked detailed questions about your prescription history, your dosage limits when your refills were scheduled. The voice was female. My blood ran cold. Someone had been planning this. This wasn't impulsive. This was calculated. Doctor, Patterson wrote me an emergency prescription to get me through the next few days, but his warning stayed with me. Without proper medication, 72 hours is the threshold for potential permanent nerve damage. Someone wants you incapacitated, Aaron. You need to find out who and why. Despite every instinct telling me to stay home, I drove to the hospital that evening to see my grandfather. I needed to hear what he'd been trying to tell me. I needed to understand what had happened 25 years ago. The pain was excruciating, but I refused to let it stop me. Madison wasn't in Grandpa's room when I arrived, which felt like a small miracle. He was awake, propped up against pillows, looking frailer than I'd ever seen him. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up with something like relief. "Aaron," he breathed. "You came. I was afraid they'd keep you away again." I took his hand, feeling how thin and papery his skin had become. "What do you mean again?" Grandpa's grip tightened with surprising strength. "They've been keeping you away for 2 years. Madison tells me you don't want to visit, that you're too busy with your career to bother with an old man. But I know that's not true. I've seen the sign-in sheets at the front desk. You come every week. She throws them away before I can see them." Tears burned in my eyes. 2 years. 2 years of Madison poisoning my grandfather against me, making him believe I'd abandoned him. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago," Grandpa continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "About why you're really in pain. About what happened when you were 11 years old. I should have spoken up then, but I was a coward. I wanted to keep the family together, and instead I let them." The door burst open. Madison stood in the doorway, her face twisted with barely controlled fury. "Visiting hours are over," she announced, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Grandpa needs his rest." She positioned herself between us, physically blocking me from him. I had no choice but to leave. In the hallway, Madison caught up with me. She grabbed my elbow and pulled me into a quiet alcove near the elevators. "If you show up tomorrow and let him talk," she hissed, her face inches from mine, "I will destroy you, not because of the money." "I don't care about the money. Some secrets need to stay buried forever. You have no idea what you're digging into." I met her eyes without flinching. "Then why don't you tell me?" Madison's laugh was hollow and bitter. "Because some truths will break you, Aaron, and this one will break all of us." That night, I sat at my laptop with shaking hands and pulled up the security camera footage from the day my medication disappeared. I expected to see Madison climbing through my bedroom window, her face caught in the grainy footage. I was prepared for that. What I was not prepared for was watching my own mother calmly open my nightstand drawer, take every single pill, and slip them into her purse. Her movements were methodical, unhurried, as if she'd done this before. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed. I turned up the volume, straining to hear. "It's done," my mother said into the phone. "She won't be able to stand tomorrow, let alone show up." My heart stopped. But then came the voice on the other end, the voice that made everything I thought I knew about my family shatter into pieces. It was Madison giving instructions. My mother wasn't the mastermind. She was following orders, and the person pulling the strings was my own sister. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark watching that footage over and over, listening to my mother take orders from my sister like a soldier following commands. Every replay made the betrayal cut deeper. By morning, my back was on fire and my heart was numb, but I had made a decision. I was going to that meeting. I was going to walk into that room and look them both in the eye. And I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what they had done. The hospital conference room was on the 3rd floor, just down the hall from my grandfather's room. I arrived 20 minutes early, each step a battle against the pain shooting down my legs. Dr. Patterson's emergency prescription had taken the edge off, but I was still limping badly. I pushed through the door and saw them all waiting. My father sat in the corner, looking everywhere except at me. My mother was positioned near the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, and Madison stood by the long table, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, the picture of a devoted granddaughter. When she saw me walk through that door, her face went white. Not surprised that I was hurt. Surprised that I was there at all. She had been so certain her plan would work. She had been so sure I would be too broken to show up. My mother's hands began to tremble visibly. The two of them exchanged a panicked glance that confirmed everything I already knew. They were in this together. They had been in this together all along. Then I saw my grandfather. He was in a wheelchair near the head of the table, looking frailer than ever, but with a fire in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. When our eyes met, tears began streaming down his weathered cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. "You came," he said, his voice cracking. "I knew you would. I knew they couldn't stop you." I walked to him and took his hand, feeling his thin fingers grip mine with surprising strength. Beside him stood his lawyer, Mr. Brennan, a serious man in his 60s with a laptop and projector already set up on the table. This wasn't just an estate announcement. This was something my grandfather had been planning for months. Mr. Brennan cleared his throat. Before we proceed with the estate matters, Mr. Wolf has requested that certain evidence be presented to the family. I want to be clear that everything you're about to see was obtained legally, either from Ms. Erin Wolf's personal security system or through official channels during an investigation into medical document fraud. Madison's confident expression flickered. My mother gripped the arms of her chair. The projector hummed to life, and my security camera footage filled the screen. There was my mother, climbing through my bedroom window with practiced ease. There she was, opening my nightstand drawer and taking every single pill. There she was pulling out her phone and making the call. The room was dead silent as her voice played through the speakers. It's done. She won't be able to stand tomorrow, let alone show up. And then came Madison's voice crystal clear through the speakerphone, giving precise instructions. Take all of it, check her calendar for backup transportation plans, and make sure to use gloves next time. We can't leave Prince. My mother let out a strangled sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Madison stood frozen, her mask finally cracking. The room understood now. My mother wasn't the mastermind. She was the operative. And my sister, my perfect little sister, had been pulling the strings all along. But Mr. Brennan wasn't finished. There's more, he said quietly. During our investigation into suspected medical fraud, we obtained security footage from this hospital covering the past 24 months. The screen changed to show the hospital hallway outside my grandfather's room. Date stamps in the corner marked the footage as spanning 2 years. We watched Madison intercept phone calls meant for Grandpa hanging up when she saw my name on the caller ID. We watched her sign medical documents with my name forging my signature on authorization forms I had never seen. We watched her tell hospital staff with a concerned expression on her face that her sister Erin had requested not to be contacted about their grandfather's condition. She's very busy with her career, Madison explained to a sympathetic nurse. She doesn't have time for family obligations anymore. But the worst footage was still to come. The screen showed Madison sitting beside Grandpa's hospital bed, holding his hand with fake tenderness. Erin called today, she told him softly. She said she's too busy with her career to visit. She has her own life now, Grandpa. She doesn't care about you anymore, but I'm here. I'll always be here. I watched my grandfather's face crumble on that footage, watched hope die in his eyes as he believed the lie. 2 years of this. 2 years of calculated manipulation of forged documents and intercepted calls and poisonous lies. Madison had spent 2 years making me look like an uncaring, absent granddaughter, while systematically cutting me off from the only person in my family who ever truly loved me. Then the footage shifted again, and my father appeared on screen. He was standing in the hallway while Madison and my mother discussed their plan in hushed voices. The audio was faint, but clear enough. Madison was practicing my signature on a notepad while my mother watched. My father stood just a few feet away, close enough to hear every word, close enough to see exactly what they were doing. And then he turned and walked away. He didn't object. He didn't intervene. He just left. In the conference room, my father broke down completely. I just wanted peace, he sobbed, his face buried in his hands. I didn't want to choose sides. I thought if I stayed out of it, everything would work itself out. My grandfather's voice cut through the room like ice. Choosing no side is choosing a side, David. You watched them plan to hurt your daughter, and you walked away. You abandoned Erin to keep the peace. That makes you just as guilty as they are. Grandpa turned to address the whole room, his frail voice filled with a determination that silenced everyone. For 2 years, Madison told me Erin had abandoned me. She controlled my phone, my visitors, my mail. She threw away the sign-in sheets that proved Erin visited every single week. She intercepted the letters Erin sent and never let me see them. I started to believe her. I started to think my granddaughter had forgotten me, that I would die alone and unloved by the one person who ever saw me as more than a source of money. He paused, gathering strength. But then my lawyer, the only person Madison couldn't control, began investigating. He showed me the call logs proving Erin tried to reach me hundreds of times. He showed me the visitor records Madison had hidden. He showed me everything. Grandpa looked directly at Madison, and for the first time I saw genuine hatred in his gentle eyes. You didn't just steal pills from your sister. You didn't just forge documents and tell lies. You tried to steal the last years of my life with someone I love. You tried to make me die believing Erin had abandoned me. That is unforgivable. Madison's composure shattered completely. She slammed her hands on the table and screamed, her face contorted with something between rage and terror. I did it to protect this family. You have no idea what you're doing. You want to know why she's always been sick? Why she's always been the broken one? It didn't start 2 years ago. It started 25 years ago. She pointed at me, her hand shaking violently. Ask Grandpa what really happened in that basement. Ask him why Mom and Dad have protected me my whole life. Ask him why Erin has been in pain since she was 11 years old. Ask him. The room fell completely silent. Every eye turned to my grandfather. He closed his eyes slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. It's time. God forgive me. It's finally time. My grandfather opened his eyes and looked around the room at the family he had watched destroy itself for 25 years. His gaze settled on Madison, who was still standing, with her hands pressed flat on the table, breathing hard, her perfect composure completely gone. The silence stretched on until it became unbearable. Then Madison spoke again, and this time her voice cracked with something that almost sounded like pain. I was 9 years old. She said, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. It was an accident. We were playing in the basement, and I got angry, and I pushed her. I didn't mean for her to fall down all those stairs. I didn't know she would get hurt like that. I was just a child. She turned to our parents, pointing at them with a shaking finger. But they made it my burden to carry forever. They told me if anyone ever found out, I'd be taken away. They said I'd go to juvenile detention, that our family would be destroyed, that everyone would hate me. So I spent 25 years making sure Erin stayed small. I made sure she stayed dismissed. I made sure no one ever really listened to her, because if anyone truly listened, they might start asking questions about why she's been in pain her whole life. They might figure out the truth. I stood there frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. 25 years ago, the basement stairs. I was 11 and Madison was 9. I remembered so little from that time, just fragments of pain and hospital rooms, and my parents telling the doctors I had fallen while playing alone. I had always believed that story. I had no reason not to. My grandfather's voice cut through Madison's hysteria. Let me tell you what really happened that day. He said, his words slow and deliberate. I was visiting when I heard the scream. I ran to the basement and found Erin lying at the bottom of the stairs unconscious, her back twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. Madison was standing at the top, completely frozen, unable to speak or move. I knew immediately what had happened. A child doesn't fall downstairs and land like that. She was pushed. He paused, and I saw tears sliding down his weathered cheeks. When your parents arrived, they didn't call for help right away. First, they talked to Madison. They coached her on what to say. They told her to keep quiet, to never speak of it again. Then they called the paramedics and told them Erin had fallen while playing alone in the basement. And I stood there and let it happen. I stayed silent because I thought I was protecting the family. His voice broke. I've paid for Erin's surgeries, her physical therapy, her medications, all of it, secretly for 25 years. Not because I'm generous, because I'm guilty. My silence helped them build this family on a foundation of lies. And Erin paid the price with her body and with her place in this family. I should have spoken the truth that day. I should have protected her. Instead, I protected a lie, and I will never forgive myself for that. The lawyer stepped forward again. Mr. Wolf consulted with a family therapist several months ago to help him understand the dynamics he'd witnessed over the years. With his permission, I'd like to share her professional assessment. He read from a document in his hands. The family's treatment of Erin was not random cruelty or simple favoritism. It was a form of psychological survival. In order to justify protecting Madison, in order to live with the choice they made 25 years ago, the parents needed to believe that Erin was worth less. Every dismissal of her pain, every minimization of her achievements, every accusation that she was exaggerating or seeking attention, all of it served a single purpose: to reduce Erin's value in their own minds. Because if Erin mattered, then what they sacrificed, her health, her happiness, her sense of belonging, that sacrifice mattered too. And they could not face that truth, so they convinced themselves she wasn't worth protecting in the first place. The room was completely silent. I looked at my parents, at the people who had raised me while systematically tearing me down, and finally I understood. It was never about me being difficult or dramatic or unworthy of love. It was about them. It was always about what they needed to believe to live with themselves. I found my voice for the first time since the meeting began. You didn't fail to love me. I said my words steady despite the tears streaming down my face. You couldn't afford to love me. Because loving me meant admitting what you did to me. So you spent 25 years convincing yourselves I wasn't worth loving. And the worst part is, you almost convinced me too. Mr. Brennan cleared his throat. Now we need to address the legal consequences of recent events. He turned to Madison. You cannot be prosecuted for a childhood accident that occurred 25 years ago. You were a minor, and the statute of limitations expired long ago. However, your recent actions are a different matter entirely. The theft of controlled substances is a Class 4 felony. Combined with the medical document fraud, the forgery, and the conspiracy charges you're facing, serious criminal prosecution. If convicted, you'll receive 2 years probation and a permanent criminal record. Your professional career will be effectively over. These charges will follow you for the rest of your life. He turned to my mother. You face accessory charges for your role in the medication theft. Cooperation with authorities and mandatory therapy may reduce the prosecution's recommendations, but you will not escape consequences entirely. Finally, he looked at my father. Your failure to report known medical fraud, which you witnessed and ignored, will be referred to your professional licensing board for review. Your career may survive, but your reputation will not. My father sobbed harder. My mother sat perfectly still, staring at nothing. Madison's face had gone completely blank, as if she had retreated somewhere inside herself, where none of this could reach her. Now, my grandfather said, we come to the matter of my estate. He gestured for the lawyer to continue. Mr. Brennan explained that Grandpa had structured his will very carefully. The medical expenses Mr. Wolf secretly covered for Aaron over 25 years amount to a substantial sum. This cannot be recovered through the courts because the original incident cannot be prosecuted. However, Mr. Wolf has created a moral test within his will. Madison may receive a portion of the remaining estate, but only if she agrees to repay the full amount spent on Aaron's medical care. This will require liquidating her assets, selling her home, her car, and depleting her savings. If she refuses, her entire share goes directly to Aaron. The choice is hers. Madison's eyes darted around the room, and I could almost see the calculations running through her mind. Even now, even after everything, she was doing the math. She was figuring out whether compliance was more profitable than refusal. After a long moment, she nodded. Fine, she said flatly. I'll pay it back. I'll sell whatever I have to sell. I watched my sister, the person who had pushed me down those stairs, who had spent 25 years keeping me small, who had tried to destroy my relationship with the only person in this family who ever truly loved me. Even now, facing the consequences of everything she'd done, she was calculating profit margins. Even now, I said quietly, you're doing the math on what's profitable. Some things never change. My grandfather reached for my hand, and I moved closer to him. His grip was weak, but his eyes were clear and filled with something I had rarely seen directed at me from anyone in my family. Love, pure and simple. I'm giving you everything, he said softly. Not because you need it, but because you deserve to be chosen, just once, by someone in this family. His breathing was labored now, and I could see the effort it took for him to speak. And there's one more thing. When you're ready, go back to the basement of the old house. There's something I left there for you, something I've been keeping since the night I found you at the bottom of those stairs. I wanted to ask what he meant, but his eyes were already closing. The meeting ended shortly after. 3 days later, my grandfather, Harold Wolf, passed away peacefully in his sleep. He had given me the truth, given me justice, given me his love. But his final gift was still waiting in the dark. 3 months passed before I could bring myself to go back to that basement. 3 months of funerals and lawyers, and watching my family face the consequences of 25 years of lies. The legal proceedings moved faster than I expected. Madison pleaded guilty to the felony theft charges and the medical fraud, accepting 2 years probation and a permanent criminal record that would follow her for the rest of her life. She sold her house within 6 weeks. Her car went a month later. By the time the courts were finished with her, she had nothing left except the small portion of Grandpa's estate that remained after she repaid every dollar he had secretly spent on my medical care. My mother accepted her accessory charges and began mandatory counseling. My father's professional licensing board opened an investigation that would likely result in a formal reprimand. Their reputations in our small community were destroyed. Everyone knew now what kind of family the Wolves really were. People asked me if I felt satisfied, if watching them lose everything brought me peace. The truth was more complicated. I didn't pursue maximum punishment. I could have pushed for more jail time, more fines, more public humiliation. But that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was accountability, real accountability, not revenge. So I set my terms, and they were non-negotiable. Madison would complete every hour of her probation and every session of her mandatory therapy. She would make full financial restitution without complaint. My mother would attend family counseling and provide me with a written acknowledgement of her role, not some vague apology full of excuses, but a specific accounting of every lie she told, every choice she made to protect Madison instead of me. My father would verbally acknowledge his cowardice at the beginning of every interaction we had. No rug sweeping. No pretending things were normal. A friend asked me once if I thought I was being too harsh. I told her the truth. I'm not interested in revenge, but I spent 25 years making things easier for everyone else by pretending nothing was wrong. That's over now. They can do the hard work for a change. It was a cold morning in early spring when I finally drove to my childhood home to find what Grandpa had left for me. The house had been sold months ago, but I had arranged with the new owners to access the basement one final time. Standing at the top of those stairs, looking down into the darkness, I felt my whole body start to shake. I hadn't been down there since I was 11 years old, but my body remembered. My hands gripped the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. I forced myself to descend one step at a time until I reached the bottom. The old water heater still stood in the corner, exactly where it had always been. I knelt down and felt along the wall behind it until my fingers found a loose panel. Behind it was a hidden compartment, and inside that compartment was a weathered cardboard box covered in dust. I carried the box upstairs and sat in my car for a long time before I could open it. Inside, I found 3 things. The first was a thick folder containing my original medical records from the accident documents my parents had clearly hidden years ago. The records proved what I had always suspected: my injuries were far more severe than anyone ever admitted. The doctors had noted that the pattern of damage was inconsistent with a simple fall. They had asked questions. My parents had provided answers that satisfied them just enough to close the file. The second item was Grandpa's journal, a leather-bound notebook filled with his handwriting spanning over 2 decades. He had documented everything. Every medical bill he secretly paid, every lie he witnessed my parents tell, every time he wanted to speak up but stayed silent instead. The guilt poured off those pages. He had been trying to make amends in the only way he knew how, with money. With silence, with secret support. It wasn't enough, and he knew it, but it was something. The third item was wrapped in a piece of old cloth. When I unwrapped it, I found a brass lighter, tarnished with age but still solid in my hand. A handwritten note was tucked beneath it. I used this to find you in the dark that night. The power had gone out during the storm, and you were lying there alone at the bottom of the stairs. I should have used this light to expose the truth instead of helping them bury it. Now it belongs to you. Keep it to remind yourself that even when everyone else kept you in darkness, there was always someone trying to find you. I moved into Grandpa's house a month later. I renovated it room by room, transforming it into something new while honoring what it had been. My design business flourished in ways it never had before. For years, I had been unconsciously shrinking myself, making my work smaller and safer, so I wouldn't outshine Madison, so I wouldn't give my family another reason to dismiss me. Now I had no one to shrink for. I took on bigger projects. I raised my prices. I stopped apologizing for being good at what I did. I also took over Grandpa's charitable foundation and refocused its mission. Now it helps elderly people who have been isolated from their families through manipulation and lies. I understand that particular cruelty intimately. Grandpa spent 25 years trying to help me in secret because he was too afraid to help me openly. Now I help others in the open, the way he should have helped me. My chronic pain remains. It always will. But I no longer see it as weakness. It's evidence that I survived something that should have broken me completely. My family and I are rebuilding something, though it looks nothing like what we had before. My mother sends letters regularly, not asking for forgiveness, but demonstrating that she finally understands what she did and why it was wrong. Some of those letters I read, some I throw away without opening. That's my choice now. Madison completed her therapy and reached out cautiously after 6 months. I responded when I was ready, which sometimes took weeks. I'm not obligated to heal on her schedule. My father visits once a month, and every visit begins with him acknowledging his failure, his cowardice, his choice to walk away when he could have protected me. The conversations are short, but they're honest. I allow gradual reconnection with all of them, but I set every boundary. I control every timeline. I decide how close they get and how fast. I didn't cut off my family completely, but I will never again be the person who disappears so everyone else can be comfortable. If they want me in their lives, they do the work, every single time. The lighter sits on my desk now next to a framed photograph of Grandpa smiling and a small sign I designed myself. I was never invisible. I was just waiting to be seen by someone who mattered, including myself. Some mornings when the early light catches the old brass just right, I swear I can feel him there, the grandfather who found me in the dark twice in my life. Once when I was 11 years old, broken and alone at the bottom of the stairs, and once when I was 36, finally ready to climb back up. Both times he brought the light, but this time I'm the one carrying it forward. Erin spent 25 years believing she was the problem. She thought her pain was exaggerated, her achievements were insignificant, and her place in the family was earned through her own failures. It took losing her grandfather to finally understand the truth. She was never broken. She was never invisible. She was deliberately kept small by people who needed her to be less so they could live with what they had done. But in the end, the light found her, and now she carries it forward for others. If this story touched your heart, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever discovered that the people who should have protected you were the ones causing you harm? Share your thoughts and your own experiences in the comments below. Your story matters, and this community is here to listen. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another story. We post new content every week, stories about strength, survival, and the courage it takes to finally speak your truth. Thank you for listening, and remember, you were never invisible. You were just waiting for the right person to see you, including yourself.